Thank you. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley.
Good morning, Director. There's been some confusion about the methodology behind the calculation of the crime rate and the reporting statistics. I wanted to try to clear a few things up. So you're typically, I believe you testified that the jurisdictions that report sort of voluntarily make up some 80% or 80% of jurisdictions report. Is that right?
For the law enforcement agencies that cover, for this year, 83% of the law enforcement agencies covering 94% of the population.
Okay, and so your usual methodology to fill in the gaps is you use the existing data to sort of identify comparable jurisdictions to the missing jurisdictions, and then use that to come up with an overall holistic estimate. Is that right?
Yes, and I apologize, I'm not a statistician, but yes, that's at a high level, yes, that's what we're doing.
But the problem in 21-22, you said, is you only had 65% of jurisdictions report, and from a statistical point of view, that wasn't sufficient to then use your typical methodology to fill in the gaps with a like jurisdiction comparison. Is that right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So then in order to reach that threshold, you went out and manually collected statistics from jurisdictions that hadn't voluntarily reported. Is that right?
We collected data from the agencies that had not transitioned to NIBRs yet.
Right, and so then you kept doing that until you had enough data overall to use your typical like jurisdiction estimation method to come up with a nationwide estimate. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what did and you're claiming that then that number, based upon A, those who reported voluntarily, B, those you manually collected, and C, the estimate you came up from the jurisdictions that were still missing, that comprised of what, 1.2% decline or whatever it was. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, so what does this manual collection process look like? I guess that's what I'm curious about.
So essentially what we're doing is we're going to the for lack of a better terms, the ComStats. For instance, Chicago, as an example, has a ComStat that's available, publicly available information that shows their crime data. And so we would go to there and collect that data for that time period from those jurisdictions.
And do you know what percent that hadn't initially reported then reported using in response to those inquiries?
What percentage we used, the manual percentage?
Or yeah, or what, I mean, how much was still missing, I guess is what I'm asking.
So we collected an additional approximately 14%. So that got us up to about 78 to 79% of data that we had collected from the law enforcement agency.
And did you contact everyone of all the missing jurisdictions, or how did you go about deciding who to manually collect?
We definitely wanted to make sure that we hit the most in population cities. And so, as I mentioned before, the cities like Phoenix, Chicago, Phoenix, New York, I think Chicago was one of them. So we went to the most in population cities to gather that data.
And so when you did that, did they all say, oh, sorry, we forgot, here's the data, or did some still not provide it? How did that go?
No, we didn't have any issues collecting that data. It was manually sourced and it was publicly available.
It was manually sourced and publicly, so what does that mean?
That just means we went out and got it. We didn't ingest it into the system. We went out and physically got it manually, or went out and got it from the agencies, and then it was publicly available.
So the agencies had already published the data, they just hadn't bothered to send it to the FBI?
The issue with 2021 was that it was a NIBRS-only collection, so those cities were the ones that were still using the old SRS process and had not transitioned to NIBRS yet.
It kind of seems to me like there's a lot of opportunities for statistical bias to creep in here based on who you decided to ask it for, based on who decided to hand it over. And then not only is that manually collected data then going into the number, but it's being used as the basis to extrapolate the numbers for other jurisdictions. So why, and you had never done this before, so I mean, have the statisticians assured you this was statistically sound? Do you understand why we have questions?
That is correct. We have some tremendous professional data scientists and statisticians that work in the UCR program that do phenomenal work. And yeah, I mean, I would absolutely say that this got us to a statistically significant level of response to be able to show that crime trend.
Because it seems kind of odd that you had the automatic update that actually shows crime went up, but then when you manually corrected it, it shows it went down. But actually some of the missing jurisdictions were LA, San Francisco, some very high crime areas. So why do you think there was that kind of change in the directionality of the crime rate?
I'm not sure that I understand your question, but just to reiterate, what is being shown now, what you can see now in the system, it does not contain that manually sourced data, which is the reason why it appears they're too low, because the jurisdictions that did not provide NIBRS data is not included in that data set right now.
So when President Joe Biden came out and said there was a record decline in crime, do you think that was correct?
I would have to go back and take a look at the crime trends from the previous several years as to whether or not that our report was reporting historically low crimes. I'm not certain about that. I'd have to go back and look at the report.
And at the very least, the report
Gentleman's
only
time's
talks about
expired.
reported crimes, right? So it wouldn't account for in areas like, well, throughout my state of California, where a lot of crime is unreported, that wouldn't be baked into your report, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
My time
Gentleman's
expired. I yield back.
Thank you.